Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SRC podcast, the SRC final podcast. Joining me, Big M, as always, Mr. Robbery's Double R and one and only Bookie John Harris. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we all?
Oh, good, gents. Oh, good. Good to be back on the pod.
Yeah, all good. Lovely day.
Lovely day. Okay, so no beating around the bush. We had a little matter of the SRC final this past Sunday, and it doesn't disappoint. Every time the SRC games are on television, whether that's YouTube, well, it's always on YouTube, I think, whether it's on, just online or on linear television, it delivers every single time in a different way. So I'm assuming everyone who's listening to this has either watched the game or knows the scoreline. So to start off, congratulations to Newport, the inaugural SRC champions. Honestly, I've said it last week. I've been saying it to a few people. I just felt like the stars were aligned from their 150th season. Everything that went on with their president, Brian Jones, BJ passing away, Mr. Newport himself. It just felt right. It felt as though this story this was the one that had to be finished. And it did, and I'm happy for that. Obviously, there's people who are not happy about it, which would be those of the Ebbw Vale. Oh no, please, audio listeners, do not change the video, please. You will not appreciate it. Your kids will not appreciate it. Oh, he's going worse. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's start with the game. And first half wise, I think Ebbw Vale really started as they meant to go on because their discipline was an issue in that first 40. A tackle in the air from the kickoff. Don't get me wrong, I've seen it before, but in a final, I can expect it in a derby. I can let it go for that, but just
they were excited.
They were expected. Get your first hit in early, even if it's late. That's how we talk. So it was a good game, to be fair. Starting was a bit shaky. That early clearance from Jack Lloyd, not even going more than a foot off the ground and bouncing straight off an Ebbw Vale player. No, they were really lucky to recover from there. But I'm going to come just first half only now, Rob. How do you feel Ebbw Vale did? Because for me, it feels like they were very lateral. They struggled to make any ground really. They seem to be contained quite easily.
Yeah, Newport won the majority of the collisions, and that continued throughout the 80 minutes, if I'm honest. But it was like that first 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it was all Ebbw Vale in terms of where the field position was. But in terms of anything more, they just couldn't get anything going. It was like everything was lateral. Every pass was caught either really high above the head or down around the knees. There was nothing going in the bread basket, and that's from all across the back line. It was like every pass, not just straight from the scrum half. And as you said, that the discipline wasn't just discipline in terms of giving away penalties. It's that accuracy and keeping to your structure and your routine. And throughout the game, there was 6 balls were kicked either dead or out on the full. There was a pass that was, they went on the overlap and that went out on the full. And so this theme of, as you've said, of, silly mistakes and allowing Newport to build a platform, which was what happened around the end of that first quarter, really took place off some sort of their own pressure, really. And I think that's what was frustrating. You sort of saw 10-6, you think, okay, you're all right, this isn't too bad. People are in it, but they haven't really looked like scoring a try, maybe one opportunity. And I think you just look at it, and then when Newport score that second score to go 2 scores ahead, that was when it sort of felt, okay, this is a really big deal. In terms of Ebbw Vale struggling here, Newport are putting chances away. Newport looked edgy to start. They themselves were just putting it wide, going wide as fast as they could, rather than try and put it through the hands and play the patient and play what was in front of them. So Ebbw Vale were putting a bit of early pressure on there, but once Newport settled, the offload started coming, the slick passing, the speed of ball was all there. Jack Lloyd got man of the match for the second, week in a row and really sort of led the attack from the front, and it wouldn't surprise me if he replaced Will Reed in that Dragon setup now.
No, you can't say it that early. That was going to be a big talking point later. Oh, you've ruined it. You've ruined the podcast. Gee, I got to start doing an agenda, honestly, but you can't be. No, I'm not happy.
Blurting things
For
up.
Christ's sake. He always ruins it.
So yeah, other than that, yeah, it was one of those ones of great atmosphere, and it's a shame really that the game didn't entirely build up to the sort of atmosphere that was around. There was a really good feeling around the town. The social media was talking about the final a lot. There was a lot of people watching on TV as well and online. So it's one of those ones. It was a shame that the first half didn't kick in a bit sooner. But yeah, it was one that Newport were grinding out going into half time. Tyrone Morris would have been the happier man for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, you go in 6-70 and you're away from home anyway in a final. Christ, it's even better. So, you know, I'll be honest. I think one of my, there's only two moments in this match that I really cared about. One came quite early, and that was one hell of a line break down the line by Luke Garrett. Oh, it was lovely just to watch a prop running with the ball, carefree. He's standing in his natural position on the wing. Obviously, he's outside the 5 meter because that's where we do our best work. I'm not gonna lie. He takes that ball in his stride and just a nice caress down. And then you know what, Tom Devine was, he was a little bit angry. So about 20 minutes later, I was thinking, I don't quite have the pace of Luke, but I've got hands of gods. So I'm just going to tip on this ball to Ben Roach by you. I'll put him into a line break. That's just as good. And it was, the skills on show were really, really high quality. When they did finally get over those first initial mistakes. I mean, the kicking battle was, it was really fun to watch. You could see that obviously a big Ebbw Vale tactic was that box kick to try and get it on around Newport's 22. It didn't ever really come off, unfortunately. So who was in now? I'm trying to think. He put in a boot. It must have been about 70. I think it might have been Morgan Richards. He must have booted that ball about 70 meters down the field. It was just an epic kick. And unfortunately his kicking didn't stay perfectly like that. And I think he put two balls dead in the end. But it was absolutely beautiful to watch. So John, I haven't come to you yet. You've heard a couple things. What was let's talk about it from the Newport side. What did you think Newport did really well? Like, the scrum battle was intense. Obviously, a nice couple of tries in that first half. Can't go wrong there.
Yeah, I thought the defence was probably what kept them in that first 20. Probably the whole game. Actually, they defended amazing all game, but Ebbw Vale really come out fast. I thought not. First 20 minutes, I don't think Newport struggled to get their hands on the ball. But when they did, you could see what their intent was to get it. It was always two-part. They always looked dangerous as well. Any turnover ball, any loose kicks, it was like two passes, and they were looking to get wide. Jack Lloyd was brilliant in that first half. A nice little dink into the 22 the first time they got into the 22, about quarter of an hour into the game. Nothing came off it, but it was a lovely little dink. They were trying to run it, but they were struggling. Newport, I think, was struggling to get going as well, but their backs did look very sharp.
So you talk about that little chip. That was about the 25 minute, and that was quite important because that was, I think, we chipped it over to Carwyn Penny, just doesn't come off. But I can't remember why, but that was when Joe Franchi went off, and pretty typical of Ebbw Vale. It's a final. Boys can't stay on. For the starters can't stay on for 60 minutes at least. It just doesn't suit well. But it was right after that Newport got that first try, and it was so well worked. They had a line out on the 22. They took a short. Pop to the front of the line, back to the hooker, and darted on. They made good ground, and then they just kept attacking the line, and then it was a really nice pass from Jack Lloyd to, I think it was Che Foster-Smith, who literally must have been about a meter from the line, and then it was just simple work for David Buckland to just snipe over. It was brilliant.
And dot down, yeah. And I felt a bit sorry for Ebbw Vale because it felt like they'd had most of the game up to that point, and then Newport come away with the first try of the game then, and it just kind of it swung then from then on, I think. Newport would definitely try to play speed it up. I think I was wondering, can Ebbw Vale keep the pace they were trying to play for a full game, which I didn't think they would. But then I thought that against Llandovery, and then they went and come back. So I thought, well, I'm not going to write them off yet. But yeah, Newport definitely wanted to play a fast game with their back line, who did look very threatening. I thought John Morris looked dangerous every time he was on the ball. So yeah.
You're 100% right, and 10-3. The game. Oh, it's early in the game. We're not at the halfway point yet, so obviously everything is still in the balance. But the scrum was about even, but you could start seeing that Ebbw was getting a bit of ascendancy. Yeah. You could see Newport trying to. They couldn't get that straight shunt on. They had to try and maneuver their bodies around. But what I really liked was the build up to the second try. Obviously, I don't want to say no. There weren't much luck involved. It was probably more inaccuracies from the Ebbw Vale side. So what was it? Newport are attacking, and Jack Lloyd puts in a lovely little grubber, crossfield into Ebbw Vale's 22. It goes out. So Ebbw Vale, they have their line out, and I don't know why, but it went to, is it Ethan Phillips for the clearance? Now, obviously, the lineup was inside the 22. I don't know why he didn't put it straight out. So he launches a long fair play. Again, a hell of a boot on that. The ball stays in. I think it was Galton the catcher. He feeds into Penny. He targets two Ebbw Vale defenders. He runs straight between them. He's in behind one of them. Quick passes off, through Morris, Foster-Smith. He makes a nice little run then. Finally get the ball out wide to Richards. He goes into contact. He stays alive. He gets that pass back inside to Morris. Same again, inside again to Buckland, and he's within 10 meters. No, Buckland obviously down then. Richards comes straight back in. He snipes up to the 1 meter line. And then it was really basic then. It was like they done one hit up, it's second receiver up, ball out to Jack Lloyd. You can see the defense screaming across. He just takes one step and he's over. So
yeah, it made it look easy to me, but it wasn't. But he made it look very easy to finish.
He did. The point I'm trying to emphasize is people say that there's not enough skill in the SRC compared to the URC. These tries were so well worked, and there's plans for them. You need these support lines for starters. You have these plans of where to run, where to attack. And then when you get into the red zone, when you start looking at phase play, they got it. Newport really did have it. They had, one hit up, second receiver, first receiver, and boom. That was it. That was, that was how they planned it. And it came off wonderfully. And, 17-6 then at halftime. So, Rob, I'm switching straight back to you. Well, what would have been the feelings at halftime? I don't think it would have been, an unfair, gap at that point. So, what really do you think was going on in the minds of in the Ebbw changing room?
I think it'd be frustration at this point because they said that the gap is not throughout the lack of trying, it's throughout the lack of accuracy in what they're trying, and the frustration of conceding that sort of second try, not right on half time, but so close to half time, is going to really sort of just cause issues. It's not great. You sort of change a lot of what you want to try and say at half time and what you're thinking. So it's probably a positive message anyway. It's probably not negative feedback at that point. It's all about the building. They'll have been looking back and drawing off that Llandovery comeback and what they can do. They were playing it, the other way that they were the Llandovery second half. So it's a slightly different sort of tactic, I guess. But the biggest problem was, and we were all saying it, is Ebbw Vale needed to come out and score first, but they probably needed to try. The first thing they did was kick the ball out on the full again.
Yeah.
Literally, the very first thing they did in that second half
From the restart, yeah.
was like you literally you couldn't, unless Newport had kicked the restart out, you couldn't have done a mistake quicker in that second half. It
Yeah,
was, and that set the tone.
It really did, and it wasn't just that. I think it was either the next set of possession or possession after a little kick battle. You just kicked this straight out again. I think it was a long kick over. Hands touched it as it went behind him when he was outside of the 22. I can't remember who kicked the ball out, but he was scratching his head, thinking, "Oh, but it was inside. We were inside. No, he touched outside." And, that was unfortunate. A bit of
it was. I think that was it. Ethan, I think, put it out on the full because it was the line outs that was just outside, and obviously it was brought back in by Griff, who set up Ethan to kick it out. It goes out and then gets brought back. And it's these just little mental lapses that probably just cost Ebbw Vale. They never grabbed enough control of this game. And in the second half, it is probably typified. Ebbw Vale get on the scoreboard with a try. You think, right, here we go. The disappointing thing was there was 3 consecutive penalties underneath the post. You play advantage. You chip it out wide. You score it out wide, but you miss the conversion because it's a wide one. No yellow card came. Off the back of the 3 penalties, and you've lost the advantage of being right underneath the posts. And that's when Newport countered with Griff just mistiming his run. The ball bounces once into Karen Penny, and that's the game done. That. I'm sorry, but that was the moment that the game was killed. Was the restart? They couldn't get the exit right. Newport finish it off, score 7 points. So then basically they're 2 points better off than they were heading into half time. And because of the mistakes, the kicking out on the full already twice in the half, that sort of thing, the massive break from Ryan Jenkins in that sort of half. He busted
that was good. But he didn't look right.
No.
I remember seeing that by Solomon live. I was like, look right. And he looked left.
It's one of those ones, could he have seen it? Different angle. They go 3 phases on and knock the ball on.
Yeah, well,
fantastic break though.
It was an amazing break, and if from that, the second time the ball was kicked on the ball, if we go that sort of next 15 minutes was all Ebbw Vale. That was when they really had the opportunity to stick their stamp on the game, and we'll go to that break for was it Ryan Jenkins. So what was it? A line out off the top. Obviously not a full line out, so he's in the back line, is just basic, simple passing, running a shadow line behind the man in front of him. And when the ball comes to him, he's just through a hole. He goes about 50 meters. Fair play to the lad.
And he's going 10 meter right into the 22, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are right. There was a couple phases later that there was a knock on, but it was from that knock on that you had that scrum that you won against the head. So that was a good scrum. That was brilliant to watch.
Proper one where the ball just stayed still and Ebbw just drove over the top of it, and all the scrum half had to do was pick it up from the back because it was just presented to him.
100%. I don't know whether the class has a Newport mistake, losing their own put in, or just to congratulate Ebbw for such a dominant scrum that we've seen all season. So obviously they pushed that scrum over. That moved the ball 3 meters back, just clean as day, perfect. I don't think the Newport front row stood up either, so you could see that battle. It was just so locked in and intense. So actually they get the ball, and it's just lovely stuff. It's just hitting up, and then drawing everyone into the middle, creating that space out wide. I mean, I was watching, I was thinking, he's not going to get this. He just jumps up with both hands up in the air and just takes it and down. Was it Bowden with that first try? That was absolutely beautiful. That, again, another well-worked try. You knew what you wanted to do. You knew where that's the Newport tend to, they narrow up when you start hitting them towards the line, and boom, you hit that crossfield beautifully. But
the first goal of the second half, which is what you want when you're behind, you come out, get that first try.
So that's 11-17 then. So you have the restart. Nice little battle. a few kicks here and there, and you get a line out on your own. Ebbw Vale have a line out on their own 22. They clear it along, and Penny takes it up and under, and this was very similar to, I think, Ethan Phillips' try against Llandovery, where Harry Dole ran towards the ball. He probably could have got there if he committed. I don't know who the Ebbw Vale player was, but
I think it was Grifter.
I think if he committed more, he could have got there, at least got a touch on the ball. But the moment that ball bounced, it was out of his control, and it was a lucky bounce. Obviously,
towards Benny, yeah.
but you create, same as Ethan Phillips against Llandovery, you create your own luck, and he goes under, and 24-11 at that point. And I do think you're right. I think that killed the game as a contest.
Yeah. And literally 2 minutes after Ebbw Vale scored. So
that's why I think it did kill it. It was less the gap that was a massive factor, but the gap had grown since half time. But the fact it was literally straight after an Ebbw try, it nullified any sort of momentum. The crowd was struggling to get into it. The team weren't feeding anything. And that sort of summed up the rest of the second half then as well, where it was sort of back and forth. A few big moments late on. Ebbw Vale are looking at a penalty in front of the posts. I think at the time it's a 9-point gap. So do you make it a 6-point gap with this is less than 5 minutes on the clock, or do you go for the try and then try and set up a penalty, a drop goal opportunity? Obviously, they went for the try. They went for the line out. Jack Lloyd, of all people, manages to squeeze into the maul and lands underneath the ball to hold it up, and that was it. They'd spent so much time in that Newport 22. It's one of those ones that, when everything's against you, couple of shots go in without the arms. You're thinking, is there a penalty coming? No, it doesn't come. Does the card come on them penalties we mentioned earlier? You need the bit of a run of a ball and to build that for yourself, to be able to turn around and say, actually, we need to do something here. And that's what Ebbw Vale didn't do. They never put this stamp on the final. I thought the kicking across, the back three and the half backs was absolutely shocking. It's one of those ones that there were so many mistakes that it's difficult to keep positive at times.
Yeah. So taking on from there then, so you talk about mistakes. So if we go back to, when that Cameron Penny try came, obviously, 13 points down at that point, 11-24. You're still very much in the game, but you are hurting, obviously. So, we'll go towards your next try, which came, what was it, around the 55, 56 minutes mark. And you're attacking. So fair play. You've got your systems in place. You're going through it, and you're gaining ground. Absolutely fair play. You're gaining ground. You get into the Newport 22, and I'll be honest. You're looking on top at this point because the Cameron Penny try was more, like I said, it was more make your own luck, more luck than anything. So you were still in the ascendancy in actual gameplay. You somehow, the ball just spills free into Cameron Penny's hand. He, for some reason, just throws a wayward offload that goes to the ground. And Galton picks the ball up. He tries to do a chicken wing pass out the back. And I think it was Curtis Gregory, just picked the ball up. And, Newport defenders there to try and stop him, but he sort of flopped over. So, 55, 56 minutes, it was, back to 24-18. And that could have been game on. That should have been game on. But it was more or less, straight from the restart. You didn't really solidify yourselves, and you've ended up giving away a penalty, and it's 27-18. It's back to 2 scores. It's brilliant game management from Newport and Jack Lloyd, but these were things that are manageable. And watching Ebbw Vale, obviously you have the luxury of being able to watch almost every home game. We only get the highlights and the odd game that is covered, and there have been a few this season, so they have been pretty good to watch. But it doesn't seem that, like, at any Ebbw Vale outside of the SRC Cup final, it doesn't seem like any Ebbw Vale team that we've watched all year. It's like I know I make fun, I laugh and say, oh, you're gonna choke and stuff, but it feels like that's actually happened, because on another day, this scoreline could have been a lot bigger because Newport created a lot of chances. They created a lot of space and they just made silly mistakes themselves. So it was a great game to watch. Always a great game to watch. Little bit disappointing it didn't have that sort of intensity like the semi-final did, like the quarterfinals. They were intense. But so 60 minutes then, that's scoring done. Everyone has scored, everyone has finished. I mean, it doesn't seem like Ebbw, 20 minutes left, 2 scores. You still the game is still there to be played. It just doesn't seem like they went for it. Do you have any reason for that? Like I haven't clocked when the substitutes happened, who came on for when, etc. But were there a few subs that sort of derailed things?
No, I think if anything, some of the subs improved matters. It was just those constant mistakes again, drop balls. The passing was still not going in the breadbasket. So again, it was allowing Newport to push up, cut out the the width, stop any big ball carrying up through the middle, which was what hurt Newport in the first 20 minutes. Forces Ebbw Vale to kick, which wasn't good. And you're in a repeat recycle. Newport get a try disallowed for forward pass. That's again the right call, but Ebbw Vale just found themselves, because of the slow ruck speed Newport were sort of forcing, the poor passing, that when they were in that sort of 22 or on or around it, they were wasting so much time going lateral, and that's what hurt them. They wasted time in the end. And
Well, it was very
that's
slow setting their lineouts up as well when they needed to be scoring, not wasting time. They seemed
yeah.
to be slow getting to everything, and it's like a bit of urgency. Like you need to score now if you want to score another one to win it. Then so get a move on.
Yeah, 100%. So
Tiredness was creeping in, because they've been started so quickly and it's a long season, but just felt like the urgency wasn't there the last 10 minutes when you
no,
need to score then.
I think you're spot on there, John. I know we haven't spoken too much, but we will get you now, and I'll bring you straight in this because I'd like to think you're a bit like me. You like the forward battle, you like the set piece. So Ebbw Vale all season they've been great at the scrum, they've been great at the lineout, they've been great at the maul. The scrum, brilliant. They managed to score a try because of that scrum. Lineout didn't look right at all game. And
not where they started at all, no.
No, and when they did get any mall set, didn't cause any problems whatsoever. We're talking about a team that's what do we say was almost 40 tries, including penalty tries, between the two hookers and those penalty tries.
Yeah,
So
31 tries between the two hookers.
Yeah, and
20 for Frankie and 11 for Morris.
and a shitload of penalty tries on top of that. So you talk us through that, the line outs and the mauls. I mean,
if for me it was less the line out and more the maul. The line out was actually functioning quite well. They varied it up interestingly. They knew Newport were going out to stop and disrupt.
Yeah.
They played a couple off the top quickly. They played the quick man at the front. They varied it up. They didn't just try and maul Newports all over the place. That wasn't gonna happen, sort of thing. So we actually saw Newport's lineout struggle a lot. They couldn't get any sort of ball from it. They were turned over several times. Quite a few of them that they recovered were sort of either knocked on the lineout or it was scrappily sort of scrambled back. So there's quite a bit on that sort of area. That was quite a scrappy area of the game. And I just felt that Ebbw Vale played a lot off it. Maybe they should have gone, like they said, the first line of the game, they play it off the top. They play it quick. They make Newport think, hang on, they're not just playing them all. They probably should have stuck to a few more. Sometimes I feel Ebbw Vale's line-out is their own worst enemy. They overcomplicate it. They've got three second rows in that pack, and the way they want to run it. But whilst it's the most improved aspect of their game over the last 3 seasons, since the return of Jason and so the rest of the team have built up, sometimes I still fancy it's just too complicated. It's up front pod isn't about to shoot. Hang on a minute. Now the back pod is shooting. No, wait. No, it is going to be the back. There's so much movement that it actually becomes really readable of where it's going sometimes. Or you on the reverse of that, there's been quite a few occasions, especially at the weekend, where the ball was just getting disrupted because there's just too much going on.
Yeah,
I feel like Newport really did their homework, I think, on these lineouts. Well, I think they just did their homework on Ebbw Vale more thoroughly than Ebbw Vale did on them. That's how it felt, because they seemed ready for everything Ebbw Vale were throwing at them. And they seemed to have men who were getting it. There always seemed to be someone getting through on the driver maul to get to the ball or get to the man with the ball. Because you could hear the referee telling him multiple times, he's fine, he's coming through the middle. But there always seemed to be an arm coming over, grabbing hold of someone. So
I think it's one of those ones as well. Losing Joe Franchi so early again doesn't help that. I know we've spoken about how many tries Yair Morris has this season, but it's sometimes, and I said this after the game, it's less the effect it had on Ebbw Vale, as in it doesn't decrease their firepower by much, but what boost of confidence does it give to Newport knowing that you haven't got the league's top try scorer sitting at the back of that maul? Every little nugget of gold in these sort of games that you can feed off in derby games as big as this and as ferocious and feisty as this, you feed off. So Joe going off with a calf injury really, really, boosts a Newport camp.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there, but I'd actually like to see some of the stats. I'd like to see the stats on try per minute, because obviously Yair Morris has only started 6 games this season, and so that's 17. I think that's 20 games that franchise. Obviously, the 2 games when he was injured, so it may be nice and not include them. But even looking at that, you go from 6 starts compared to 18, and I think I don't know if Yair Morris, obviously second half things like that, tired bodies, but I'd like to see who's the actual more effective tries per minute. That'd be a really good one if there's some statisticians out there that have access to this sort of stuff. I'd love to see that. But yeah, wow, I don't know what else to say for Ebbw. John, do you have any closing words before we start talking about some star players?
Yeah, just a little. I think Ebbw Vale are going to be disappointed. Of course, they haven't lost at the. Oh, it turns out Ginnerglass Stadium. I've been calling it Cineglass all week, but listening to S4C, it's the Ginnerglass Stadium, and they haven't lost a game all season. So that's what made me talk myself. I think I did pick them, didn't I, in the predictions? But I think I talked myself into it because of that home form. And yeah, they just you can't lack the effort and the forwards. They're outstanding. But they just seem to be lacking a bit behind when it come up against a team of quality of Newport, which I thought after the way they dealt with, again, going back to the semi-final, Llandudno got one of the best backlines in that league, and they dealt with them. So that's where I think they'd be disappointed, because they can, but it just didn't, they could not deal with Newport's backline in this game. They tried, so they really tried their best, but I think towards the end, that it was starting to get a little desperate, little bit, because they knew they had to get 2 scores to win this game. Surprisingly, we only saw 1 yellow card in the game. That was quite nice to see after we've seen so many in the other knockout game. Took to the 74th minute before we got a yellow card. But the 2 things that stood out to me were just Newport's defence and Jack Lloyd. He was, as That's as good a game as I've seen anyone play in this league this season. He was just absolutely outstanding. Everything he was doing, even stopping holding a ball up over the line to stop Ebbw Vale scoring a try. Being very clever about it because he knew as soon as that ball was over the try line, there's no offside, so he could come in from the angle he did and got himself under there. So he was doing a bit of everything.
Yeah, I think he must have been training a little bit with his brother Johan, because that's been a bit of a style of the Scarlets this season, holding people up over the try line. But yeah, you're totally right. You've hit the nail on the head. Jack was absolutely outstanding. An error early on. That kick I mentioned that barely got off the ground and rebounded off Ebbw Vale. But after that, there wasn't much that he did wrong. And what I really liked about him was his variety of kicks. He would try little grubbers, he would try chips. So this is the type of 10 that I like seeing, and as an actual 10, an out and out 10, I'd say he's a better 10 than his brother because of how he plays the game. He's more of a game manager than he is give me the ball, I'm going to try and do something myself. But that's me as a Scarlet being annoyed watching Johan Lloyd at 10 for the last 2 seasons, which is tough for anyone. So Rob, I know he is on the opposite team, but a bit of praise for Jack Lloyd in this game. We've spoken about Matt O'Brien. He flew in from South Africa, which
the night before, wasn't it?
I'll be honest, I think that brings up. Yeah,
he got back in, was it Heathrow at 8 o'clock in the morning?
That's unreal.
But openly admitted himself after the game when we was having a chat with him that he was giving Ebbw Vale too much. He was blowing out his ass. Yeah. And I think he
did come on and kick it straight out.
Like for me, I'm thinking more of the next level up. He's meant to be the attack coach or an assistant attack coach, whatever it is, with the Dragons, who were down in South Africa and they still had that game. I don't understand that dynamic. Why would you be flying back? Like, yeah, I know it's a final, but you haven't been there in that 23 more than 3 or 4 times this season. It's time to just let it go. Like,
it's one of those ones, and it's a nostalgia thing, and unfortunately, it's one of the things that's probably bad about the league in terms of quite literally parachuting players in. Not that it was the performance, if anything, it helped Ebbw Vale that he was being played, but the fact you're bringing over, a Dragons coach who basically plays part-time in the league, this season. But yeah, Jack was the orchestrator, of the entire game. Really, really did stand out. I thought Johnny Morris, I know John's already shouted him out. Everything he did, he was making 10, 15 yards. Everything. He was out wide next minute. He's in the midfield channels. It's one of those really, really big ones. Ben Roach yet again has a fantastic game. Leads from the front, does the hard yards. Again, some nice breaks in there too. So I think it's one of those ones that, from Newport's perspective, those big names that they look for to step up and sort of perform really did. And I think if you actually go across the Ebbw Vale 50, the Ebbw Vale 23, there's not many people. There's certainly no one in the starting back line that scored more than probably, if I'm being nice, 5 or 6 points out of 10. If I'm being honest here. You look at the pack. I thought it was a couple of good performances in the front row.
Yeah.
I thought Curtis had a
good game.
Yeah, Sean's been playing the season for Ebbw Vale for me. He's
cracking turnovers again.
Yeah, he's starting to show where he's been at and why they brought him in. So there's one of those ones. It's harder to pick out Ebbw Vale performances than it is Newport's, and it's just that elevation, that level up that allowed them to do it. But I think, in many ways, the real winner of this game, away from obviously Newport picking up the title, is that the league is displayed in such a magnificent fashion. Around 4,000 supporters there. A cracking atmosphere. Loads of flags from both sets of supporters, lots of noise. There's 1,000 people on the terrace 45 minutes before kickoff. S4C were coming out and doing loads of filming. It's very rare that in rugby in the UK you get to see flares. It's a very big thing in football in the UK, or French rugby. It was fantastic to see, all the flares being set off and great. Great
Rob,
yeah, it made it feel special, I thought. Right.
yeah.
Go
So,
on.
Rob, could you do me a favor? Can you say it?
No pyro, no party.
Hey!
Hey,
And you probably already know, but that is the title of this episode.
hey.
Carrie, no,
He was
Oh,
very pleased with
I thought
himself.
the title was about Will Reed going to Worcester. Oh, sorry, Matt. I didn't want to mention that again.
aye.
But
Okay.
yeah, it's a big occasion for both clubs. And effectively in two ways, both clubs benefited in some really good ways. The league benefited. It was a 50,000 quid day for the club at the end of the day. Don't have to split the gates. Newport go away. They're on their way to America now for their tour of Texas.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, I seen him put a photo up at the airport. Yeah, fair play.
So it's fantastic that the culmination of the league is such a positive one from so many different aspects.
It is, and it's great all round. And I still, it's amazing, how many people actually did turn up, and on a Sunday. Next season it is going to be ending a bit earlier. We've had the United Rugby Championship fixtures. We've had the weekends for the European competition, the Six Nations. So we know all the weekends of the season now, and it's trying to find a slot where we put this final, get it on a Saturday. It's got to be on a Saturday. There's no argument whatsoever. I don't mind, if it's going to be the 10-team knockout again. I don't mind one of the wild card playoffs and a quarter final being on a Thursday night, but the semi-finals and the final, they've all got to be televised, and they've got to be on the Saturdays. Yeah. It's working out when is the best day to really play this. I haven't gone through the fixtures for the 4 regions to see, is there a weekend when they're all away. But it would be lovely to have no other club rugby or any rugby of any kind in the country on that day. Have that as a focus and put it in the bloody millennium or principality. Like, I don't know when that deal ends. But
yeah, do you know what though? I think it's a weird one because I think I like the cup final being held there, and obviously the clubs all voted on what the playoff system was going to look like. But I quite like the home advantage all the way through. I feel it does, if they sort the seeding right and get the seeding spot on, it actually gives you something to fight for. Otherwise, yes, to a certain extent you have something to fight for, but if you get that, top 4, a lot of the teams then are content with just pushing 4. You've got a home semi-final but then all of a sudden it's like, well, hang on a minute, you also, if you put it in the stadium costs 60,000 quid to turn on a day. Someone's got to pay for that. But also the clubs don't make the money then. And I guess that's the other good thing of you go away to home advantage. Someone gets a nice gate, and it also just backs up the whole thing. And this is where it removes the charade around when Ponty was saying there wasn't enough income, there wasn't enough home games. Ebbw Vale, right? Ebbw Vale now, 2 games this year. Pontypool at home at Christmas and Newport at home in the playoff final. All of a sudden, you're looking at 9,000 people through the gate and over 100,000 quid taken.
That's amazing. Let's be honest. That you've got your SRC license sorted for a season.
That's what I mean. So it's that sort of thing, and I know that's the very extreme end of what we're looking at. But
I think I agree with you as well. I think I do like the top seeded team having home advantage on the final. I think because it is the clubs need that money so much, and it does look. I think it looks better than having maybe 4,000
Yeah.
people in the Principality.
I'm with. I am.
To see the old grounds on telly as well, nearly full, making noise. You can say players going off.
Look,
I don't
know, party.
behind the bar and tickets. I'm not against it staying, going to the top seeds, having home advantage.
Yeah, like for me, one of the finals needs to be at the National Stadium.
Yeah.
One of them has to be.
Yeah, the cup final, definitely agree. Yeah.
The interesting thing, and I actually tweeted this out earlier, was so Judgment Day's obviously been canned for next season, but the original plan was for a triple header, and it was very early discussions with this, but for Judgment Day to basically be tagged in then with an SRC final.
I'd be comfortable about that.
So personally, I don't really rate that idea, and obviously it's not going to happen with Judgment Day being canned. But yeah,
I'm not against trying new things, and that is a new thing. But at the same time, I think you kind of take the spectacle away because they wouldn't class Daft Cup final as the biggest game of the day, which it really needs to be.
I think as well, you've got to look at how you manage the crowds as well. I mean, like 4,000 people turn out at Eugene Cross this week. Do you get 4,000? You probably get an increase of Newport supporters because it's probably easier to get to Cardiff. But then you also lose the neutral Ebbw Vale supporters that only go down because it's 5 minutes down the road. And that would be the same whenever you go. If it was held in Llandovery, you get an extra 500 people turn up because the game's on their doorstep. Where I'm not spending a full day going to Cardiff to watch it. So it's a difficult balance, I guess. And there's loads of ways you look at it. I do like the idea though of having the cup final down there.
Yeah.
Only problem is you can't get flares into the Principality Stadium.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. It's probably okay. You've got me around it. The cup final probably better off to have in there. And obviously sponsors coming in next season, so hopefully a little bit of extra money will filter down. Probably won't, but maybe you can just cover that day for the clubs. Maybe get a bit of prize money for the cup. That'd be really nice. So, I do have some interesting news to run by you.
Is it on the Principality Stadium security?
No, it's not. So let's not talk about that.
You're only down Conversation Street.
Oh my God, you boys are terrible. Anyone listening, if you ever see Double R or Bookie, give them a wide berth.
Mind the lager.
Literally, you can say hello, give a smile, shake your hand. Don't let them speak. Run away as fast as you can. Honestly. So I'm hoping some of you listeners like coffee because there is a coffee company called Afuera Coffee Company. I haven't practiced this, as you can already tell. We might get a bit of a sponsorship deal with them, hopefully. So this is a specialty hand-picked coffee beans from Central and South America, sourced from certified Rainforest Alliance farms. A rich volcanic soils infuse beans with vibrant flavors. It's ethical and sustainable farming practices, meticulous roasting process for rich, smooth and aromatic. I'm not even halfway. If you like coffee, we'll be putting the link up. There'll be a code. I think it's rugby stuff as it stands. We'll make sure all this is clear for you. If you like your coffee, give it a try. We might get like 10 pence off from if you buy in, like a tenner's worth or something. And I think that's probably pushing it. But yeah, it'd be nice to be able to afford a headset for these two boys, or at least a headset that they can actually plug in and work. Because
up the mic, up the clip-ons.
Oh, you need
the lapels.
You need headphones. Stick them on. Look professional. These are my boys actually. Whilst we're on the comment subject, and John, he had like those call center headphones once upon a time, but they seem to have disappeared over.
Yeah, I think they're making me shout too much. So I'll just be more comfortable now. I'm free.
This has really taken a turn. Okay, Afuera Coffee Company. If I've pronounced that wrong, okay. I will promise I will do this pitch a lot better in the next coming weeks because we will be back in the coming weeks. because we've got some reviewing to do. We've got a bottom 5 and a top 5 to review, give a nice little grade for each club, and let's see where we're going to go into next season.
And
So-
prediction. Who won the predictions? That's what everyone wants to know.
Who won the predictions? Yes, the prediction. I haven't actually updated it from this week. And someone already knows who's won just because of placings, and I know the full rankings. But it's gonna be really interesting for you listeners to find out. And you know what? Maybe we expand this. Maybe we get an actual full listeners prediction league going. I think that's probably a decent idea. I think Super Brew or somewhere do something stuff like that we can work out with.
If I win the prediction league, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to go down to Spitty Park, light a green flare, and stand in the middle of the pitch, bollock naked, running around with my middle finger up.
Is that next season or now?
I'm just going to randomly do it at some point in the next year.
Okay, everybody, if you see...
I might even do it in the middle of the game that's down there next season.
If you see a police report for some random guy being naked at Spitty Park...
With a flare, no pyro, no party.
With a flare, no pyro, no party, as we know.
You could have red, white, and green.
Oh, wow. This
I
is
only got
getting...
2 hands, John. Where's the third flare going?
Well, you said you're going to be a bit bollock naked, so
Boys,
that's up to you to figure out.
Oh, boy, rugby podcast, SRC, Super Rugby Camry, rugby.
Hey.
We don't want to talk.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there'll be a lot of new boys next season that will be bollock naked after their first away game, trying to make their way home. But that's not going to be you, Rob. Not going to be you. So let's move on. So as we've done after the wild card, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, we talk about some of the players that might not be here next season. And there's not many from Ebbw Vale and Newport, if we're being bluntly honest. They haven't had great numbers of players allocated. There's definitely one from Ebbw Vale who's already, starting to integrate, and that is Harry Rees-Weldon. And you know what? Bang on. I called it after the England under-20s game. Once the boys have hit that performance with under-20s, okay, well, they'll have the Junior World Cup, but this gap between the Six Nations, the 26 Nations, and the 20s World Cup, they can't be coming to the SRC. They need something more. They've hit a real high, and they need to keep climbing that trajectory, that scaffolding. So, Harry Rees-Weldon, he's managed to get a few fixtures for Dragons. He's looked pretty good in what is a desperate team. Let's be honest. One thing we can talk about is that the Dragons did, have a game in South Africa, and not only do they have Hugh Anderson and Harry Rees-Weldon, stars of SRC earlier this season, they also had Carmarthen Quinn's Lewis Morgan and Llanddyfri's Jamie Hughes. Now, Lewis Morgan obviously was part of the Scarlets Academy up until I think 2 years ago. He came on 74th minute, scored a try in the 75th. A try every 6 minutes. They should have started him. They could have got 10 tries out of him and then subbed him off for whatever second-rate hooker they had to start. And Jamie Hughes actually replaced another SRC star, Dylan Kelleher-Griffiths. I think it was like 16 minutes. I'm not quite sure why he went down, but Jamie, he really acquitted himself really well in a struggling pack for the Dragons. Jamie has been in and around the Scarlets, the development 15, some of their friendlies. So that is a bit of news.
Fair play to the Dragons, I thought, that they didn't want to take players out of the SRC final from Ebbw Vale and Newport to take over there. So I thought that was really good.
Well, let's be fair, they probably could have taken Joe Franchi. He didn't. I know hindsight is a bitch, but who knows what may have happened? Who knows? Rob, I'm looking over your squad now, and I can't really see anyone else that might be stepping up. I don't like the word stepping up because I think the SRC is absolutely amazing. But for the sake of it, is there anyone else within the Ebbw squad who you think might be going on to fully professional times?
probably one of those ones where it depends on fitness on where Owen Conker sits. I believe he was shipped out to South Africa and he's been in and around a few squads. But he's had some serious illness to start this season off, so he's not got a lot of game time under his belt. So he's probably too far away to start the season. But again, with how things develop, we may well see him in there. And that's similar with Kobe Reese is probably the other one that's closest. It's a hotly contested spot in that back row at senior level. So there's probably no one realistically that's on the verge of stepping up. In reality, it's how they manage their own squad, I guess, at the moment. And I mean, Evan Lloyd has trained with the Dragons this season, but I don't think he's consistent enough at the moment to be making any change. And there's exclusive rumour, that Dorian Jones may be coming back to add us some depth at 10.
That's
just a
wow.
rumour.
Just a rumour. I think we might have to put that on our socials. We might have to sit here. Okay, so over to Newport again. Not a great allocation. The allocations have either been injured or not available. So, someone like Jordan Morris, who he's expected to go really. He's a brilliant ball carrying loose head. Still needs there's a lot of work needed. Like when we talk about these young loose heads, Jordan Morris is in the same category as Josh Morse, both JM, which is going to be a nightmare if they both keep going together. Josh is, he's so great at scrummaging, and that boy, he can bench. I think he's benching something like 175, 180. It's absolutely incredible how strong these boys are at 20 years of age. And then Jordan is the opposite. He's got the all court carrying game that needs to work on his scrummaging. So I'd probably still expect Jordan to, still cut his teeth for another year or two down here. Nick Thomas, I'm not too sure what the Dragons' second row supplies are like. I don't know if they're signing anyone for next season. But, is Nick someone who we could expect back with Newport, or do you think he's going to transition all the way?
He probably starts the season with Newport. But he's one of those ones, he's right on that cusp. He probably gets a bit of game time somewhere in there and starts transitioning over relatively quickly. I think it's one of those ones for the Dragons at the moment in terms of who they want to try and bring in, and especially up front. But yeah, Nick seems one of those. He's that next one. If it wasn't, I think he'd have done it already if it wasn't for his injury to make that step up.
Yeah, and then I think the only other realistic one is probably Harry Ackerman. He's probably half transitioned already. I obviously we haven't seen him in many match 23s, but he's probably in that traveling reserve a hell of a lot of times. He is really knocking on that door. So again, he's probably going to be one that if he doesn't, if it's been 3-4 weeks where he's not involved in the 23, he might drop down for a couple of weeks, get some game time. But probably the big one from Newport, and spoiler alert, Will Reid has gone to Worcester, so that leaves the Dragons with Angus O'Brien, the incoming Tinnis de Villa. I think there might be one. Is it Lloyd Evans?
Lloyd Evans, yeah.
That's those three are their frontline 10s. We know they need a bit of work, but obviously they've lost now. What was that fourth person in Will Reid, who, quite frankly, I think he's made the correct decision, because I think he's going to Worcester to be in the. I know it's Championship. I know it's not the Prem, but he's going to be the first 23, maybe even first 15. We don't know fully what the Worcester squad is looking like at the minute. So, smart move for him, but that does open up a spot for a young 10 to really slot in. Harry Ford probably got another year, maybe 2, before he's, fully ready, even though he has performed adequately well whenever he's been asked, whether it's with Wales or whoever. But Jack Lloyd, and we've spoken about Newport's 10s a lot this season. He's come in, when I think it was during the Cup run, during the Six Nations, where he was really just given the shirt and told to run with it, and by God has he. He's shown everything. Like we spoke, when we talking about the 10 position, I said, Calvin Penny looked all right at 10 early in the season. Much better at 15. I can clearly say that now. But Jack is looking like he's got so many strings to that bow.
It kind of reminds me of Dan Edwards when he was coming through, and
he's older than Dan.
He looks young.
I think he's a year older than Dan. I want to say he's a year older.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that slot there.
I mean, he's got that feel about him, the way he was playing, like
You know what? I think I might be wrong by you. So no, Dan Edwards is 22.
True. Yeah.
And
so is Jack Lloyd.
So is Jack Lloyd. He's 20. Okay, they're the same age. Okay, well, actually, let's get the specifics now. Let's get the specifics. Can I get his date of birth?
I got that feeling off him. Like when I seen Dan coming through, like this boy's got something special there.
Yeah, so obviously
if he got a chance at regional, he would take it, kind of thing.
That's fair. I do think that Jack would do it. I can't find his date of birth anyway. I can find his brother's date of birth, obviously, but there's no love going for Jack Lloyd at the minute. 7th of May is 2003 is Dan Edwards. If anyone knows when Jack Lloyd was born, please drop us a line. So either I can be proved incredibly wrong, or the normal thing happens and I'm barely right. So boys,
I don't know. I don't know.
This has been a fun. Oh Christ in hell! So this it's been a fun pod. We talked about the SRC final. It's come to an end.
What a first season!
What a season! Unbelievable to watch, and I do believe in my whole heart the standard is better than what we saw last season. We saw games being played last season on Ebbw Vale, like we have this season, and I do think the standard has raised. It's been brilliant to watch every single game. Even when Swansea were on TV and they were like, kind of naff. I hate to say like that because they're looking so good now. Yeah. Even then they were fronting up, they were doing, and it was there was these battles everywhere. You could see the fight in everyone. So it's been amazing to cover this season. I'm so thankful, and thankful for you boys for joining me on this journey. I couldn't do it without you. And to all your listeners, thank you so much for listening in. You help provide, give us a platform, and it's absolutely amazing. We want to build it. We want to make the world know about Super Rugby Cymru, because you know what, it deserves it. And I know some people might think it's fairy tale, but I dream of one day of there being a fully professional Super Rugby Cymru, however far away that may be, however slow it may take to get up, even if it goes boys training 10 hours a week starting. It is, I think that is the way forward. So boys, we've come to the end this week. It's all over. Thank you so much. Remember, like, share, subscribe. We will start with either a bottom 5 or top 5. We're probably going to go bottom 5 next week, aren't we, boys? And have a bit of a review, see how teams are going, and we'll catch you all again the next one. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, everyone.
No start, everybody.
Super.